one person dies. Read that again. A 1 in 3 chance of never coming home. This isn't Everest. This is something else entirely. You've seen the images from the top of the world. The long lines of climbers waiting their turn. The triumphant photos. The commercial expeditions that cost over $100,000. Everest has been tamed, marketed, sold to the highest bidder. But that is an illusion. A dangerous one. Because while you are looking at Everest, you are missing the real killers. The silent giants. The 10 mountains far more treacherous, where the odds are not in your favor. And here's the part nobody talks about. The official statistics are clean, tidy. But the reality on the ice is a brutal, chaotic mathematics of survival. Take K2, the second highest peak on Earth. Climbers don't call it the Savage Mountain for dramatic effect. They call it that because it tries to kill you with every step. Its final approach, a narrow, ice-choked passage known as the bottleneck, sits directly beneath a 100-ton wall of unstable ice. It's a game of Russian roulette at 8,400 meters. Then there is Nanga Parbat, the man-eater. It boasts the single largest mountain face on the planet. The Rupel face is a sheer 4,600-meter wall of rock and ice. That's 4.5 vertical kilometers. Imagine climbing the height of 15 Eiffel Towers, stacked one on top of the other, while the mountain actively sheds avalanches the size of city blocks. The danger here isn't just the altitude or the cold. It's the raw, untamed violence of the mountain itself. Unlike on Everest, there are no easy paths. No vast teams fixing ropes for hundreds of clients. On these peaks, you are often terrifyingly alone. The support systems are gone. Rescue is a fantasy. And here's where it gets interesting. We think of climbing as an ascent, a battle against gravity to reach a single point. But on these mountains, that's a fatal misunderstanding. You see, reaching the top is not the goal. It's a trap. Because the data shows something chilling. Your odds of dying don't just go down after you summit. They go up, dramatically. So the real question isn't, can you make it to the top? It's, can you escape it? You see, the summit, that moment of triumph, often marks the beginning of the deadliest part of the climb. It's a cruel paradox. Climbers spend weeks, some months, pushing upward, focusing every fiber of their being on reaching that singular point. But the statistics tell a different story. For every 10 climbers who die on this, 6 of them perish during the descent. 6 out of 10. Think about what that means. You've just pushed your body to its absolute limit, battling thin air and exhaustion, and now you must somehow find the strength to reverse the entire process, often with waning daylight and worsening weather. This is where the true kings of the death zone assert their dominance. We are not talking about Everest's crowded slopes. We're talking about peaks like Annapurna 1. As you heard, for every 3 people who summit Annapurna 1, 1 person dies. This mountain, standing at 8,091 meters, has a summit-to-death ratio far exceeding Everest's. It's a ghost mountain. The first successful ascent was in 1950 by a French expedition led by Maurice Herzog. They made history, but at a terrible cost. Herzog and Louis Lachenal suffered severe frostbite, losing all their toes and most of their fingers. Their survival was a miracle. But the mountain had claimed its pound of flesh. And here's where it gets interesting. Many climbers refer to the death zone as anything above 8,000 meters, where the human body begins to shut down. But on these specific mountains, that zone extends far lower. The extreme weather, the sheer technical difficulty, the constant threat of avalanche and rockfall, they create a death zone that starts at 7,000 meters. This is not just thin air. This is a battle for every breath. Take Kanchenjunga, the third highest mountain in the world, at 8,586 meters. For decades, it was considered unclimbed because local Sikkimese people revered it as sacred. They believed a demon resided on its summit. The first successful ascent was in 1955 by Joe Brown and George Band, members of a British expedition. They honored the local belief, stopping a few feet short of the actual summit. a respectful gesture. But the mountain still demands respect in other ways. Kanchenjunga boasts one of the lowest summit success rates among the 8,000-meter peaks. Its weather patterns are notoriously unpredictable. Storms can materialize in minutes, trapping climbers high on the mountain. Winds can reach speeds of 200 kilometers per hour, stripping away body heat in an instant. This is not just a cold wind. This is a weapon. The official reports often focus on the objective dangers: avalanches, ice falls, crevasses. But what they often omit is the psychological toll, the constant fear, the relentless exhaustion, the decisions made under extreme duress. You find yourself making choices that would be unthinkable at sea level. One wrong step, one moment of inattention, and it's over. This is not a place for mistakes. Dhaulagiri 1, at 8,167 meters, is another such peak. Its name means White Mountain, and it lives up to it. It's a massive, sprawling massif, perpetually covered in snow and ice. The first successful ascent was in 1960 by a Swiss-Austrian expedition. It took them 8 attempts over several years to finally reach the top. 8 attempts. This speaks volumes about the mountain's resistance. Dhaulagiri's west face is a labyrinth of ice and rock. It's a vertical puzzle, constantly shifting. Climbers describe it as a living entity, actively trying to repel them. And what few people realize is the sheer isolation. On Everest, there are dozens, sometimes hundreds of other climbers. A faint sense of security. On Dhaulagiri, you might be the only team on the mountain for weeks. Rescue is not coming. Not quickly, not easily. This isolation amplifies every fear, every doubt. It strips away the illusion of control. You are utterly alone against a force of nature. So when you look at these mountains, remember this: the summit is not the victory, it's the midpoint. The true test of survival begins when you turn around. And the question remains: what happens when that descent is impossible? This is not a hypothetical question for the climbers on some of the world's deadliest peaks. It is a grim reality. You see, the mountains we are discussing here often present obstacles that make a simple turn. Think about what the supposed goal, only to realize the path back down has vanished. The official reports rarely highlight these moments of utter despair. They focus on objective hazards, ice falls, crevasses, but they omit the psychological terror of being truly trapped. Take the Gasherbrum peaks, particularly Gasherbrum 4, known as the Shining Wall. At 7,932 meters, it's not even an 8,000-meter peak, yet its sheer face, a vertical ocean of rock and ice, has repelled all but the most elite climbers. The first ascent, 1958, by Walter Bonatti and Carlo Mauri, was a feat of raw willpower. They spent days on that exposed face. Days. The sheer scale of it is hard to comprehend from sea level. Imagine climbing a skyscraper, but the skyscraper is made of crumbling rock and ice, and the air is so thin your lungs burn with every breath. Here's where it gets interesting. Many of these mountains feature what climbers call no-fall zones. One slip, one moment of fatigue, it's over. On Everest, there are sections where a fall might be caught by ropes or a ledge. Not here. On Gasherbrum 4, a fall from the upper reaches means a drop of thousands of meters. You are looking at a free fall. The data shows that many accidents on these peaks are not caused by a single dramatic event like an avalanche. Instead, they are the result of accumulated fatigue. Small mistakes, a misplaced foot, a handhold that gives way. After days of relentless climbing, your body and mind are simply exhausted. You are operating on fumes, and the mountain waits. Dhaulagiri 1, the White Mountain, also presents this brutal challenge. Its west face is a complex maze. The 1979 expedition, led by Reinhold Messner, faced unprecedented difficulties. They spent weeks trying to find a viable route. The mountain seemed to actively resist their every effort. What few people realize is the sheer isolation on these peaks. On Everest, you often see a trail of headlamps winding up the mountain, a strange comfort in numbers. On Dhaulagiri or Annapurna, you might be the only team for hundreds of kilometers. Rescue is not coming quickly. It might not come at all. This isolation amplifies every fear, every doubt. It strips away the illusion of control. You are utterly alone against a force of nature. And now pay attention to this. The official records for these mountains often list disappearance as a cause of death, a chillingly simple term. It means no body was ever recovered, no trace. The mountain simply consumed them. This happens with alarming frequency on peaks like Nanga Parbat, the man-eater. Its vast, complex terrain, combined with its extreme weather, makes search and rescue operations nearly impossible. The 1970 expedition, which saw the first ascent of the Rupel face, ended in tragedy with the death of Günther Messner. His body was not found for 35 years. 35 years. Think about the scale of that mountain, how it holds its secrets, how it refuses to give up its dead. This isn't just about technical climbing. This is about entering a world where the rules of human survival are rewritten. The very act of turning around, of admitting defeat, can be the most dangerous part, because sometimes the mountain simply doesn't allow it. It presents a labyrinth of ice and rock that seems to shift and change, forcing you into impossible choices. The truth is, on these mountains, the summit is not the victory. It's the midpoint. The true test of survival begins when you turn around, and the question remains, what happens when that descent is impossible? When the mountain itself becomes your tomb? It's often not a sudden, dramatic event. It's an agonizing surrender. Think about what that means. You are not simply falling, you are being absorbed. The official reports often speak of objective hazards. They rarely capture the personal toll. But what of the climbers themselves? The ones who choose these mountains, knowing the terrifying odds? This is where the story truly begins. You see, for many, these peaks are not just challenges, they are a calling. They represent a purer form of alpinism, a gamble against nature where the stakes are everything. And here's where it gets interesting. On these mountains, there are no fixed ropes laid by commercial operators, no strings of porters carrying oxygen. You carry your own weight. You make your own decisions. It's a stark contrast to Everest's crowded slopes. The 1970 expedition to Nanga Parbat, for example, saw Reinhold Messner and his brother Günther attempt the first ascent of the Rupel face. This was a monumental undertaking. They were pushing the limits of what was considered possible. Günther Messner's body was not found for 35 years. 35 years. This speaks volumes about the mountain's power. Imagine the choices made in those final hours. The decisions that separate life from disappearance. The official narrative sometimes simplifies these stories. It focuses on the heroism, but it often glosses over the brutal reality of isolation. On mountains like Annapurna 1, the sense of being utterly alone is profound. You are days, even weeks, from any meaningful help. The 1950 French expedition, led by Maurice Herzog, achieved the first 8,000-meter summit, a triumph. But Herzog and Louis Lachenal suffered severe frostbite, losing all their toes and most of their fingers. Their survival was a miracle, but the mountain had claimed its pound of flesh. This is not just a physical battle. It is a profound mental one. The constant cold, the relentless wind, the knowledge that a single mistake could be fatal. You find yourself questioning every instinct, every decision. On Kanchenjunga, the third highest mountain at 8,586 meters, storms can materialize in minutes. Winds can reach 200 kilometers per hour. This is not just a cold wind. This is a weapon. The first successful ascent in 1955 by Joe Brown and George Band honored local beliefs, stopping a few feet short of the actual summit. A respectful gesture. But the mountain still demands respect in other ways. The mountain presents these impossible choices. Do you push on, knowing the risk? Or do you turn back, admitting defeat? For many, turning back feels like a failure. But on these peaks, It is often the wisest, bravest choice. The data shows that many accidents on these peaks are not caused by a single, dramatic event like an avalanche. Instead, they are the result of accumulated fatigue, small mistakes, a misplaced foot, a handhold that gives way. After days of relentless climbing, your body and mind are simply exhausted. You are operating on fumes, and the mountain waits. The truth is, on these mountains, the summit is not the victory. It's the midpoint. The true test of survival begins when you turn around. And the question remains, what happens when that descent is impossible? When the mountain itself becomes your tomb? What happens when the mountain refuses to let you go? You discover it doesn't. You find that you're the one who refuses to let go. You carry it with you, not as a ghost, but as a change inside your own bones. You've seen the official reports. Cause of death, exposure, fall, disappearance. The language is sterile. It misses the point entirely. The survivors, the ones who come back missing fingers, toes, friends, they speak of something else. A clarity that only exists in the thin, cold air above 8,000 meters. Think about Maurice Herzog after the first ascent of Annapurna 1 in 1950. He lost nearly all his fingers and toes to frostbite. A terrible price. Yet he wrote, "In my worst moments of physical suffering, I was deliriously happy." How do you explain that? It's a perspective forged at the absolute limit, a place where life is stripped down to its most basic element, the next breath. And the one after that. This is the part the news stories never cover. We are obsessed with the summit, the flag planting, the conquest. We have turned these sacred places into a checklist. But the climbers who truly understand these mountains, they know the summit is a beautiful, tempting lie. Remember the 1955 British expedition to Kanchenjunga? Joe Brown and George Band stopped just a few feet short of the true summit. They did it to honor the local belief that the peak was sacred. They understood. The goal isn't to stand on top of something. It's to be in its presence, to learn from it, and to have the wisdom to walk away. That act of walking away, that is the true summit. It's a victory not over the mountain, but over your own ego. And that's a much harder climb. So we look at the numbers. The 1 in 3 death rate on Annapurna. The 35 years it took to find Gunther Messner on Nanga Parbat. We see tragedy, and it is tragedy. But it is not the whole story. The full story is in the quiet moments of the survivors. The ones who stare at a distant horizon, seeing a line of ice that no one else can. They paid an incredible price, but they brought back something that cannot be measured in meters or dollars. They brought back a new perspective on the value of a single, simple breath, the warmth of the sun, the sight of a human face. Things you and I take for granted every single day. They went to the edge of existence and chose to come back. So after all the pain, the loss, the impossible struggle, you realize the mountain was never your opponent. It was never a monster to be slain. It was a mirror. And the real question is, what do you see when you finally look away from the peak and turn to face yourself?